The air conditioning in the ballroom bites at my bare shoulders, a sudden chill against the warmth rising in my chest. Crystal chandeliers drip light onto polished marble, reflecting 1,000 fragmented smiles and the gleam of fine jewelry. The clinking of champagne flutes is a constant, delicate music beneath the low hum of conversation. My parents' annual gala, the apex of their social calendar, and tonight, the stage for my own quiet dread. I stand a little apart, near a display of silent auction items, pretending to examine a framed print I've seen 100 times. The dress feels heavy, expensive silk I didn't choose but was told was appropriate. It's a cage of sorts, beautiful but restricting. Then, a voice, low and sharp, cuts through the murmur right beside me. My Aunt Carol. She's smiling, but her eyes are like chips of ice, fixed on me. Well, look at you, darling. All dressed up, she leans closer, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper meant to be overheard by anyone within 10 feet. Her breath smells of gin and peppermint. You certainly landed on your feet, didn't you? Marrying David, such a catch. Smart girl. Every family needs a good trophy wife these days. Keeps the gossip interesting. The smile stays plastered on her face, but the ice in her eyes hardens. She thinks she's being clever. She thinks she's putting me in my place. Reminding everyone that I wasn't born into this world of old money, that I'm an outsider who got lucky. A decoration. I freeze. The champagne flute in my hand feels suddenly heavy, fragile. The hum of the room seems to fade, replaced by a roaring silence in my ears. A trophy wife. The words land like a physical blow, sharp and precise. Years of building, years of struggle, reduced to a pretty accessory on a wealthy man's arm. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps me more than you know. My life before David wasn't a fairy tale, but it was fiercely my own. It was late nights fueled by cheap coffee and burning ambition. It was building something from nothing, brick by painstaking brick. I started a small tech consultancy out of my cramped apartment. There was no safety net, just the terrifying exhilaration of knowing if I didn't make it work, I wouldn't eat. There were times I ate ramen for a week straight, times the electricity was nearly cut off. But with every client won, every project completed, I built not just a business, but a quiet, steely confidence. I learned to be resourceful, relentless. I learned that real power wasn't given, it was earned, often in the trenches. My parents, they are good people, in their way. But they've always lived in a different world. A world of legacy, of appearances, of keeping up with the Joneses, or rather, the Vanderbilts. They were proud when I got into a good university, slightly perplexed when I chose to start my own business instead of joining a prestigious firm. It's risky, dear, my mother would say, her brow furrowed with genuine concern, but also a touch of social anxiety. What will people think? Meeting David was unexpected. He was a client, initially. Brilliant, driven, kind. He saw the late nights, the intensity in my eyes, the fire that burned within me. He didn't see a potential trophy. He saw a partner, an equal. Our connection was intellectual, then emotional. We talked for hours about work, about life, about dreams. He respected my drive, celebrated my successes, large or small. When he proposed, it wasn't about merging empires or social standing. It was about two people building a life together, supporting each other's individual paths. He knew my business was my passion, my identity. He never asked me to give it up. He never even hinted that I should. He encouraged me to push further. He invested in my expansion, not as a handout, but as a strategic partner who believed in my vision. My business grew, not just steadily but exponentially, fueled by innovation, hard work, and David's strategic insight complementing my technical expertise. By the time of the gala, my company wasn't just successful, it was a major player in its niche, quietly generating significant revenue. Revenue I owned a substantial portion of. But none of that seemed to matter to certain members of David's family, or even some of my own parent circle. When I married David, the narrative shifted. Overnight, It seemed I went from ambitious young woman to the girl who married well. The whispers started subtly. Comments about my wardrobe, my lifestyle, the assumption that David bought it all. Invitations extended, and guessed, where my name felt like an afterthought. Conversations steered away from my work towards topics deemed more appropriate for a woman of leisure: charity events, interior decorating, the best places to lunch. It was a soft erasure, a gentle but persistent push into a box labeled wife. At first, I tried to ignore it. David was wonderful, my business was thriving, our life together was full and happy. Their opinions shouldn't matter. But the constant low-grade dismissal wore on me. It felt like they were stealing my identity, replacing the woman I was proud to be with a caricature they found more convenient. My early struggles against their assumptions were mostly internal. I'd grit my teeth, smile, and change the subject. I'd work harder, build bigger, thinking my success would eventually speak for itself. It didn't. Not in their eyes. The closer the gala got, the more the pressure mounted. My mother called daily, discussing dress codes, seating arrangements, potential interactions. "Aunt Carol will be there," she mentioned, her voice tight. "Just be polite, dear." She can be opinionated. I knew Carol's reputation. She was the gatekeeper, the one who judged everyone by their lineage and their bank account, specifically their inherited bank account. Her approval was sought after, her disapproval feared. She represented the old guard, the immovable rock of their social hierarchy. The night of the gala, getting ready felt less like preparing for a party and more like suiting up for battle. The beautiful, constricting dress felt like armor I wasn't sure was strong enough. David saw the tension in my shoulders. He held my hands, his eyes warm and steady. "Hey," he said softly. "Remember who you are. You walk into any room as yourself. Anyone who doesn't see that isn't worth your time." His quiet confidence was a lifeline, but it couldn't shield me from the barbs delivered with a smile. And then came Aunt Carol's whisper. A trophy wife. The full force of their collective dismissal hit me. It wasn't just her. It was the culmination of every slight, every condescending look, every assumption that I had traded my life for comfort. In that moment, standing under the glittering chandeliers, surrounded by people who saw me as a decorative object, something inside me shifted. The hurt curdled into a cold, clear anger. The desire to be accepted evaporated, replaced by a fierce, primal need to protect the woman I had fought so hard to become. The room swam slightly. I saw David across the room, talking to a senator. He caught my eye, a question in his look. I gave him a small, tight smile. He didn't understand what had just happened, the internal earthquake that had just leveled my carefully constructed politeness. Aunt Carol, oblivious to the storm she had unleashed, was still holding court, regaling someone with a story, her laughter sharp like breaking glass. Other family members drifted by, offering polite hellos, their eyes scanning my dress, my necklace, assessing my value as an acquisition. I felt myself shrinking under their gaze, the air growing thin. This was the deep end of the pool, and I was drowning in their expectations, their limitations of who they thought I was. Every instinct screamed to retreat, to find David, to leave. But the cold anger held me rooted. A trophy wife. The words echoed. A brand on my skin. They wanted a trophy? Fine. I would give them a trophy. But it would be a trophy of my own making, forged in my own fire, not theirs. My thoughts raced, sharp and clear, unlike the fuzzy haze of the room. What did they value most? Money, status, legacy, the things they were born into, the things they believed I had married into. But I had my own, built from the ground up. It wasn't old money, but it was mine. And it was significant. The gala always included a moment for the family to announce their major annual philanthropic contributions. It was part status symbol, part genuine generosity, part tax write-off. My father, as the patriarch hosting the event, would make the announcements from a small stage. This was the platform. This was the opportunity. A new determination hardened my resolve. The feeling of drowning receded, replaced by the icy calm of a predator who has found its prey. I looked at Aunt Carol again. She was watching me now, a faint, smug smile playing on her lips. She knew her comment had landed. She was waiting for me to look away, to shrink, to accept my assigned role. Not tonight. My decision solidified. I would use their own game, their own values, against them. I would turn their stage into my own. The moment arrived. My father tapped the microphone, the sound echoing slightly in the vast room. Conversation softened, heads turned towards the stage. He spoke of the foundation, its mission, the importance of giving back. He began listing the major donors of the year. The Sterling Foundation, the Ainsworth Trust, the David Chin family contribution. My name wasn't mentioned. Of course not. It was David's family name that mattered in this context. I was just part of the family contribution. As my father finished the list, preparing to move on to the evening's entertainment, I started to walk. The silk of my dress whispered around my legs. My heels clicked softly on the marble. Every eye seemed to follow me as I moved from the edge of the room towards the stage. David saw me, his brow furrowed in surprise. My parents looked bewildered, and Aunt Carol, her smug smile faltered. Confusion flickered in her eyes. Where was I going? I reached the small set of steps leading up to the stage. My father paused, mid-sentence, looking at me with a question mark on his face. The room was silent now, the earlier murmur completely gone. All the air seemed to be sucked out, leaving only the heavy silence and the beating of my own heart, strangely calm. I didn't ask for permission. I simply walked past my father and approached the microphone. He hesitated, then stepped back, his surprise warring with ingrained politeness. The microphone felt cool beneath my fingers. I looked out at the sea of faces. The shock on some, the curiosity on others. And Aunt Carol, standing near the front, her face now a mask of confusion, her eyes fixed on me, sharp and uncertain. I adjusted the microphone slightly. My voice, when I spoke, was clear and steady, amplified to fill the hushed ballroom. It didn't tremble. It held the quiet authority I had earned in late-night coding sessions and high-stakes negotiations. "Good evening, everyone," I said. My gaze swept across the room, meeting eyes, holding them. I paused for just a moment, letting the silence hang heavy. My father just listed some of the generous contributions made this year. All incredibly important. I glanced towards Aunt Carol. Her confusion was deepening. What was happening? Where was the shy girl who should be standing politely by her husband? I turned back to the microphone, my voice gaining a quiet strength. There was one contribution, however, that wasn't included in the list tonight. A contribution made not by a family trust or a joint account, but by an individual. A murmur started to ripple through the room. People exchanged glances. My father looked visibly uncomfortable. David was making his way towards the stage, a look of concerned confusion on his face. I saw Aunt Carol tense, her eyes narrowing now, trying to understand. The smugness was entirely gone, replaced by suspicion. I took a slow breath. This was it. The moment I stepped out of the box they had built for me. "This year," I announced, my voice resonating with quiet power, "I am personally donating $20 million to the foundation." Silence. Absolute, complete silence. Not a single flute clinked. Not a single whisper was heard. Then, a collective intake of breath, like a wave sweeping through the room. My father gasped softly beside me. My mother brought a hand to her mouth. David reached the steps of the stage and stopped, his eyes wide with surprise, then softening into proud understanding. And Aunt Carol. Her face was a picture I will carry forever. The confusion morphed into disbelief, then shock. Her jaw literally dropped. Her eyes, those icy chips, widened impossibly. She froze, rooted to the spot, amidst the opulent crowd. $20 million. My personal donation. Under my name. The sheer number, the scale of it, hitting her like a physical blow. She had called me a trophy wife, dismissed me as someone who merely married money. And I had just announced a donation larger than many of the old money family contributions from my own resources. I wasn't finished. I let the numbers sink in for a moment, the weight of it hanging in the air. Then, I added the detail that would truly dismantle her narrative. This donation, I said, my voice calm, almost conversational, comes from the profits of my company, Apex Innovations. It felt right to give back to the community that has supported my work. Apex Innovations. My company, not David's. Not a joint venture.
Meaning?
The company I built with ramen dinners and relentless effort. The one they had largely ignored, writing off my work as a quaint hobby I'd abandoned once I was comfortably married. Aunt Carol's face crumpled slightly. The shock deepened into something akin to horror. She wasn't just wrong. She was publicly, spectacularly wrong. In front of everyone she sought to impress and influence. The trophy wife had just proven she commanded resources that rivaled, perhaps even surpassed, her own. Her carefully constructed world, where lineage and inherited wealth were the only true measures of worth, just tilted on its axis. She looked utterly blindsided, her carefully composed facade shattered. The power had shifted, visibly, undeniably, in the heart of her own domain. The silence in the room was deafening, charged with disbelief, speculation, and the palpable discomfort of those who had shared Aunt Carol's assumptions. Then, slowly, a ripple of applause began, tentative at first, then growing stronger, spreading through the room. It wasn't just polite applause. It felt like genuine surprise and, for some, perhaps even admiration. I stepped back from the microphone. My father recovered first, his shock giving way to a beaming, albeit slightly flustered, smile. He put an arm around my shoulders, pulling me close. "Well," he boomed, his voice regaining its strength, "that was unexpected, but incredibly generous. We are so proud." David was beside me then, his hand on the small of my back, his eyes full of warmth and pride. He didn't need to say anything. His look said it all. He saw me. He always had. Aunt Carol was still frozen, a statue of mortification in a designer gown. People were glancing at her, then back at me. The air around her seemed to crackle with her silent fury and humiliation. Her whisper, meant to diminish me, had instead amplified my own quiet power for the entire room to witness. The rest of the evening was a blur of forced smiles, awkward congratulations, and wide-eyed stares. People who had previously given me cursory nods now approached me with a new deference, asking about Apex Innovations, about my work. The conversations were different. No longer confined to social trivia, they touched on business, on technology, on the future. My identity had been forcefully corrected. I avoided looking directly at Aunt Carol for a while, but I could feel her gaze on me, hot and resentful. Later, I saw her being comforted by my mother, her face still pale, her usual imperious posture slumped. The queen of the castle had been dethroned, at least momentarily, by the trophy wife. The feeling wasn't pure triumph. It was bittersweet. I had defended myself, yes. I had proven them wrong in the most undeniable way possible. But I had also revealed the depth of their dismissal, the casual cruelty of their assumptions. It stung that I had to make such a grand gesture to be seen, to be acknowledged not just as David's wife, but as me. Walking away from the gala that night, the heavy silk dress felt different. It wasn't a cage anymore. It was just a dress. My armor was internal, forged long ago, tested and proven tonight. The whispers wouldn't stop entirely, I knew that. But they would carry a different weight now. The story had changed. I wasn't just the girl who married well. I was the woman who built her own empire, quietly, determinately, and who chose to wield her power on her own terms. The taste in my mouth was complex, the sweetness of vindication, the lingering bitterness of the battle, and the cold satisfaction of knowing I had defended my own worth against those who sought to erase it. I walked taller, the night air cool and clean against my skin, finally breathing freely. If this story hit close to home, I'd love to hear your version. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. Thanks for being here. Subscribing helps bring more of these to life.